Welcome to the People's Guild.
Each week we explore the Splinterland universe with guests from all across the mythical land of Praetoria.
Join us on our journey as we discuss the evolution of the game, the strategy, the lore, and the exciting path that lies ahead.
To support the People's Guild, make sure you subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts, and also check us out on PeakD, YouTube, and Twitter.
Send your questions, suggestions, and epic battles in our comments through Twitter or email at thepeoplesguildspl@gmail.com. We'll feature the best in our episodes and maybe airdrop you some prizes.
Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show.
All right, welcome back to the People's Guild. Another week, another episode. We are back after a little bit of a temporary hiatus for the 4th of July. So to all of our American listeners at home and abroad, happy belated 4th of July. If you were traveling, hope you had safe travels, safe trip, and are home safe and sound. Without further ado, we've got a wonderful guest. We've been trying to tee this one up for quite some time. And we had one on the docket a few weeks back and kind of slipped through our fingers, last minute changes. And we're back. And we've got this guest to present to you. Hopefully a wonderful conversation in store for you guys today. You know him by his brand name, by reputation. He seems to deliver new updates that continue to shake things up in the greater world of Splinterlands. He's one of the great third-party supporters of Splinterlands. We've got from Team XBOT, the team himself, Sylar. Welcome to the People's Guild, Sylar. Thank you for hopping on, man.
Thank you. Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Just wanted to get it kicked off with hearing sort of how you got into software development and how that led you eventually to Splinterlands.
Sure. So I came into Splinterlands kind of from two perspectives: as a player, as a gamer, and as a developer. And kind of it was a nice fusion. On the automation and programming side, I've always been into automating things. Goes back more than 10 years. I remember back in the old school MMORPG games, there was always an opportunity to automate your accounts and earn more than the rest. And I was doing it back then. And yeah, whenever there's an opportunity to get an edge, make your life easier using programming, I've taken that opportunity. And yeah, I was able to use that skill in Splinterlands in what felt like an allowed, acceptable way, so I don't have to do it in the shadows. And that's how I got here.
I was wondering, what are some of those old school MMO games that you played? I know I initially played Ultima Online, and that was sort of like one of the first big ones that went live. And I played that for a while, and that was a lot of fun. So can you give us some examples of some of those games that you played?
I can. They're less known, so I'm worried you're not going to know them. There's one called Metean 2. You can look it up. It's just like a regular MMO. There's Fly for Fun, so Fly FF. Pretty popular in certain groups, but I guess not globally known. And Dofus, that's more of a French game.
Okay. What are some of the automation tools you were making for those games?
So in all these games, you have like your character, you can farm things, you have your professions, fishing and everything. So obviously making bots that move your character around, level up your professions while you're sleeping, all of that. Farming gold. I didn't sell them. I was not interested in the money, but getting my account leveled.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's pretty safe to say that you were also sharpening your skills for what was to come later. I think the entire community kind of openly acknowledges XBOT as being the de facto king of Splinterlands automation at this point, at least publicly available automation. I'm curious, Sylar, was your, you had a little bit of a background over the last decade or so doing some software development personally. Was this, did that take you down a career path of software development, and you've just kind of added on to that, forced to XBOT at this point? What has your career looked like in relation to software development?
So I have a computer science degree. I am a programmer by trade. I was employed for around 4 years before doing XBOT full time. And I was just a programmer, basically. Like at least 75% of my job was coding. So I'm very familiar with it. I kind of got into doing XBOT very organically, naturally. I was doing my own accounts. I have a bit of a bot farm, medium-sized bot farm. And so I needed to automate it myself. And I was doing that way before XBOT for over a year. And so it was fairly easy transition to go from a private bot for my own thing and making it public.
Well, that's certainly, I think, one of the more unique stories for Splinterlands. I'm curious if you don't mind sharing, Sylar, how do you define a medium-sized bot farm? What does that mean?
I used to think that I have one of the biggest, but there was some numbers leaked, or I guess revealed, a couple of months ago, maybe a year ago, by one of the community members, who was showing that some of the bot farms back then had more than 20,000 accounts, maybe 30,000. So once I saw that, I realized, okay, I'm not a big farm. I'm probably more on the medium to low size, smaller sized ones. So I would say 1,000 is like the cutoff when you become a big farm. So I'm still under that.
So that's something you're still running. How is the staked SPS rewards affected that? Have you kind of started to move any of those counts around, or up and down different levels, or stack up some SPS for those?
I keep it very simple, maybe too simple, because I haven't. My farm is not profitable, has never been. I think I'm still down from the initial investment I put in, the $10 each. I still haven't made that back. So I'm not doing that good. Maybe don't listen to me for advice. But it's a problem. I need to get SPS. I've been buying it more. I don't want to rent it out. So hopefully I can get enough that I can supply all of my accounts from my own SPS. I've been telling people in my own Discord as well, you should be buying lots of SPS.
Yeah, the SPS delegation tool that you implemented on XBOT, I think for a long time there were a ton of delegations up for grabs, just kind of sitting idly by. I saw the APR drip down to, below 1%, I think. And as soon as the SPS requirements announcement came out a couple of days ago, I managed to hop on and squeak out one of the bigger delegations to support my account. I played Diamond Champ, and I'm getting close to 100K staked on my own account, but that's not going to cut the muster in staked SPS world. So I'm curious, in terms of overall volume, have you seen, kind of bird's eye view of the marketplace on XBOT? Is all of that rented out? I haven't checked back in a couple of days, but I would imagine most of that stuff flew off the shelves pretty quickly.
Yeah. It kind of equalized very quickly after the announcement. So we were looking at less than 0.5% APR back then. Now it's 13%. So it's basically the same as the official market. And the volume has gone up. We've done, at this point, over 11 million SPS has been rented out. Before the announcement, it was something like 3 million. So definitely lots of volume.
Do you know how much volume the in-game market is doing? Is that something you're able to determine?
No, I don't have that number, but it's a good question. I'll look it up.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if what are you doing about as much as the in-game market or more? I know there's been some issues with the in-game market. You sort of have to cancel your rental after 7 days to make sure then re-rent it. Otherwise, people kind of hold on to it for free. So would be curious to see what are people more using XBOT than the in-game market even?
Probably not. If I had to guess, it's probably 10 times more on the official one, but it will be good to know.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see if the People's Guild and our massive following can swing the tide in your favor, Sylar. That's an elbow. I'm ribbing Dave McCoy there. So if you're listening, Dave, thanks.
Poor Dave. I mean, it's nice that we got Dave to finally listen to the podcast, and now every episode you have to bust his balls every time.
It's a friendly shout out, man. Nothing more than that. I'm curious, Sylar, with SPS staking being upon us, I'm curious, are you going to continue to kind of build out that side of the house in house XBOT? You know, I would love to see kind of a table distribution chart, if you will, of, you know, which accounts hold how much, what leagues are you know, kind of at full 10x activation of staked SPS. You know, you give a quick scroll through on any proposal, you can see, you know, the first, you know, couple of spins of the mouse wheel before you get to less than 1 million SPS. But beyond that, it's, you know, anybody's guess in terms of where a lot of that SPS is living. And I'm curious if you've thought any further just to kind of give a better picture of how you will be earning relative to your peers in your respective leagues on the SPS delegation side of things.
Yes, so I think so. I think there will be more development. I wasn't sure if there will be an opportunity to work on it more, because obviously if you're competing against the official market, they have a huge advantage, right? It's right built into the game. People don't have to go to a separate website to get their SPS. But it turns out, because it's kind of come out, the official market came out as an MVP, you have 6% fees, which seems fairly high. So I think there will be an opportunity for us to stick around and keep getting volume through it. So I think it will keep getting developed. What you mentioned is definitely doable, sort of indicating to people how much exactly they need to get that 10x multiplier, and maybe even giving a comparison how much you would need in the next league and the one below. So there's certain things I could put in to make it easier. The main thing I could add is making the delegations longer. So having longer than 1 week delegations. I think that's one of the bottlenecks at the moment. Only problem with that is it's not a clean solution. You would need an escrow system where people put in the money for the full rental, and then they get paid for the first week because that can't be canceled. And then you would need to kind of drip feed the escrow payments every day. But it could be done.
Can I ask, how long did it take you to develop the XBOT SPS sort of delegation rental market?
It took me around a week. In terms of hours, maybe 50 hours to 100 hours.
Okay. So yeah, it seems like, you know, do you know why, what are your thoughts on why the team has had, you know, sort of has these problems and maybe has taken them longer than that, and they have sort of different issues with setting it up than you did?
Probably, I mean, they're very spread out at the moment. They're working on a lot of things, and they have different teams that have to do things together. So you've got to kind of wait for the artist to finish something off until you can continue, I guess. So there is a bit of a downside to having bigger teams. I'm not too sure. That's my guess. I guess it's the fact that they don't have that many team members anymore. Like I think the whole company is something like 50 people, probably 20 of them, 10 to 20 of them are developers. So, you know, they're working on land, the SBS delegations and everything else. I feel like it kind of makes sense that they're not able to focus all their energy right now on this SPS rental market.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that, you know, full disclosure, I was pretty underwhelmed with the interface, the interaction with the in-game market. It's not the most user-friendly. So, you know, I hope there is some more development coming down the pipeline in terms of kind of making that a more robust system and allowing for season-long rentals, or, you know, even extends further into the future, you know, a la the card market. Yeah, I'm curious, Sylar, with the some of the other products that you've got under the XBOT suite. So you've got the practice bot functionality and I think I was one of the first guys to put my hand up in your Discord and say, hey, is it possible to put my account up for potential battles? Because I went in and I think I battled the Diamond Champ bot, and it wasn't much of an XBOT challenge that I had come to expect, facing XBOT plenty of times in ranked. Is there any kind of other cool opportunities there you feel like to expand upon challenges and make them maybe a little bit more specific? Like, can I dictate particular rule sets perhaps, or maybe a mana window or anything like that? Is that even within the realm of possibility, or is that a bit of a pipe dream?
I had similar ideas. I was thinking really big when I was making practice bots. I wanted to do a whole new game mode, but it's very limited the way it's been implemented. So we can't specify the rules or the mana at the moment. I can't do that. Nobody can do that with the custom battles. So if that gets opened up by the team, it opens up opportunities for me to think bigger. But I would love to have some sort of PvE mode where you know what you're up against, and you can get a small reward if you maybe kill 10 bosses or 10 opponents in a row. I would love to do something like that, but at the moment it's very limited that you can. It's just the regular game mode, the ranked game mode, but without any rewards.
Have you been inspired at all by the likes of Splinterforge, or even as far as somebody like Golem Overlord, to kind of come up with your own either fork or video game in its own entirety?
A little bit. I've given a thought. Splinterforge for me is not a fun game. Sorry for people who like it. I know it's profitable. That's kind of the only thing you hear about it, is that, oh yeah, you can earn more money. I've never heard someone say, oh, I'm having a really good time playing Splinterforge. So that's kind of put me off, that it's just not a very fun game. And I think, I'm not sure if it's worth it. Sure, the idea is great to utilize your Splinterlands assets in a different game, but it needs to be very different. Splinterforge is kind of the same experience with a bit of a twist, where you're still battling cards against cards, team against team. I would like something very different, where you're using the assets in a totally different type of game.
So what type of game do you have in mind, or in your wildest dreams?
I don't have anything right now. I mean, what I was thinking about is a PvE mode, basically. So similar to like a mobile game where you have different levels, 1, 2, 3, and then you've got the final level where it's much harder, and you know what you're up against. So level 1 is going to be 32 mana, this rule set, and that's the opponent's team. And you can just keep trying until you figure it out. It's sort of like a tutorial mode as well. That was the idea I initially wanted.
Yeah, that'd be cool, man. I keep thinking about kind of longer term, and I'm right there with you. I tried Splinterforge a handful of times. I went back to it a couple of times, and I just cannot find the fun in Splinterforge. I see some of the videos of the content creators out there, and shout out to those guys for diligently completing their battles time and time and time again. It feels very tedious, even as a viewer of somebody else, quote unquote, having a good time playing through Splinterforge. But yeah, no knock on those guys. They've drawn a crowd, and the crowds seem to be sticking around. So credit to them. But yeah, thinking bigger picture, I would love to see a very different kind of arena of gameplay enter into the kind of greater Splinterland asset ecosystem. And I don't know, have either of you guys played Marvel Snap?
I've seen it.
No.
You've seen it, yeah. So similar trading card game. I think there's a whole bunch that kind of comes to my mind in terms of ways that Splinterlands can kind of pick the brains on the Marvel Snap guys. I think they've got a total collection of maybe 200 cards, but each card has maybe 5 or 6 or 7 variants, and some super rare, like gold foil level variants, and some very common ones, and just yeah, there's a ton of different variation in the aesthetics of the game, but then also the gameplay itself it feels like Splinterlands cards could kind of find a happy medium between Marvel Snap and what Splinterlands is offering. So something to think about, Sylar. That's your next golden goose, man.
Thinking very big.
Yeah. So let's get back to XBOT specific stuff. So obviously we had the proposal pass. Modern is soon to be a quote unquote bot free zone. And before we talk XBOT specifically, how effective of a proposal and solution do you expect to be coming to Splinterlands? I mean, are we going to be waking up on September 1st to a human only modern format, or what are your kind of expectations, having your ear to the ground and being very familiar with bot development?
Simple answer is probably yes. I think you will get a huge reduction in bots right away without any enforcement. Just purely because at the moment it's very normalized and pretty much the majority of the community, what it feels like, is using bots. So there will be definitely a huge change. In terms of, I think people will figure out a way around it. I think this proposal gets us to the important question, which is, can you ban assets? I feel like, to me, that's the most important question, because as long as you're not taking away someone's assets, they can move away to a different account and continue their bot operation. They would lose $10 for the spellbook, but they would still have their assets, right? That's the important part. So the question is it gonna turn into a centralized game where we're taking away people's assets who we think are bots or are going against the terms of service? I feel like because we have a team made of Aggie, and he is really into, I guess, property rights and freedom and decentralization, I think we're not going to be able to take away people's assets. So the bot solution is never going to be perfect. There will always be people with their champion one collection and botting and earning lots of money in modern, and they're going to be banned, and they will just move their assets to a new account. It will cost them $10, but so what? I feel like as long as people accept that trade-off, and that, yeah, we will get a lot less bots, but there will still be a few, that's fine. But we should not say, okay, we want a perfect solution, let's enforce a ban where we take away this person's $100,000 worth of cards. That would be a red line for me.
Yeah, full agreement with me. It's really interesting that you say, kind of initiate the chase for these quote unquote botters. I'm sure both of you guys were aware and kind of caught wind of the situation. I want to say it was the better part of a year ago at this point, but shout out to those guys on Team Japan, UA, Hellslash, Azapun. I think they were witch hunted out for essentially botting their account, when actually they've got fully stacked decks, and they spend hours playing the game and have spreadsheet after spreadsheet kind of offering analysis for what to play in this rule set with this mana cap and these splinters available and that sort of stuff. So that could be worst case. And they, just to kind of make matters worse, I remember specifically, I don't remember what the tournament was, but it was a sponsored tournament that those guys were refused entry, or they had entered and they were escorted out of the tournament, the digital tournament, the online tournament, only to find out later that actually they're just excellent players. Yeah, so it's a scary world where that witch hunt begins, and we're kind of dealing with consequences unknown at this point. But I think you're spot on there with me. I would happily sacrifice XBOT in my own collection as being an asset usable in modern format, to know that the vast majority of folks have done the same, and 95 times out of 100 you're playing a human on the other side of that computer.
Mm-hmm. And hopefully it's a good overall change. So even ideally it should be good for everyone, right? So maybe even the bots are going to benefit because yes, you have to move to wild. There will probably be less rewards in the short term, but maybe this whole change will get more people interested in the game because there's an actual human-only format that will be more fun to play as a normal player. So hopefully everything will benefit in the end.
How effective do you think the team will be in being able to identify people who are still using bots in modern?
Depends how hard they try. Based on the last town hall, it sounded like they're going to do a Cloudflare anti-bot. They're going to have the terms of service change. And I saw yesterday in the support section of Splinterlands, you can report a person for using a bot. So there's a bot report option now. So it sounds like you will be able to enforce it through the community or some sort of vote. I think you will be able to identify a lot of people. We don't have a massive community, so if anyone is doing it blatantly, they will be found out eventually. But I think you will have some people who do it in a smart way and kind of discreet, and you just won't find them ever. They will just be doing it.
Yeah. So how, just from your experience with developing bots and things, like how effective is the Cloudflare anti-bot? Is it fairly easy to get around if you try, or if you spend a little time doing it, or is it something that's pretty effective on its own?
So I think I think Cloudflare is actually not a good solution. From my understanding, you can get around it by not using the Splinterlands API to submit your teams, but instead submitting teams on the blockchain, which is possible because we're a Web3 game. So from my understanding, if you just decide to submit your teams on the blockchain, you are completely getting around Cloudflare. So it is not working in that scenario. Then you're relying on the terms of service and the community to report those people. So I don't know what they've come up with. They've said that they have different solutions in Discord. So hopefully they have thought about this.
So relying on the community, but I mean, how does the community know? Like, how do I, as a player, know? Oh, this person's using a bot to run this account. I mean, are you just guessing? Is it turned into like McCarthyism, where you're just like accusing?
Oh, this guy just whooped me. He must be a bot.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly. Right.
I think so. I mean, in some cases, I think it will be obvious. Like, obviously, if you're using a bot service, well, it's not going to be possible. But if you have like cards delegated from one account, and that account is like delegating to 10,000 other accounts, it's delegating the collection to 10,000 other accounts, it's probably a bot operator. So in some cases, I think you can make fairly safe assumptions. But again, for some people, you just won't be able to tell. If someone is giving it thought and trying to hide their actions, they can. It's not hard. You just won't be able to detect some people.
Yeah. So if there's someone, who's got maybe 10, 20 different accounts, and each of those accounts kind of holds those assets, and they have their own, they're not using a service, they've developed sort of their own custom script, that's going to be almost impossible to detect, right?
Yeah, I think there will definitely be some people botting and making a good amount of money.
Tell me, Sylar, Battle Helper. Let's talk about the Battle Helper. It's a great tool. I think it's safe to say that it took off like bloody wildfire. I think it was pretty hush hush, and then all of a sudden it was absolutely rampant and everywhere from maybe manually played ranked games to tournaments to brawls, and everywhere outside in between. How do you define a bot, and can you tell us, does Battle Helper fit the bill?
I don't think it does. For me, a bot is a tool that you let do it. You let it do its own thing. So you can let a bot run for a week without even knowing about it, without checking on it, and it will just do its thing. With Battle Helper, you're in there for every minute of the operation of the process, and you are making decisions, you are requesting it, you are putting the team in, you can make adjustments if you want. Obviously, it's very different to someone who just plays by themselves. But for me, it's not a bot.
Do you think Battle Helper should be kind of shoved under the umbrella of bots and therefore escorted out of modern format?
No, I'm very biased, obviously. But just as a user of the tool, I really like it. I mean, before Battle Helper, I wasn't in a guild. I didn't play brawls because you can't bot it. Like I didn't want to bot it, and I just can't really play the game that well. I don't want to be there kind of putting half-assed teams together and just losing. So I didn't play brawls, but now that I can play at a decent level, I'm playing brawls and tournaments a little bit. So for me, it's actually enabling me to play the game.
Fair point. Okay. Well, something that I would love to see is, and kudos to you, man. I really appreciate. I think you were the first of the kind of third-party bot suppliers that came out and said, we will be 100% compliant with the no bots in modern proposal, and you took it a step further and offered tournament creators the opportunity to toss in that line of code, no helper, and therefore your battle helper is completely disabled should somebody attempt to call on XBOT for guidance in constructing their hands. I'm a little surprised, and I'm wondering if the team has reached out to you. Is there any reason why we haven't had in-game or Splinterlands made hosted tournaments that have excluded Battle Helper?
No, so I haven't been reached out to, and I haven't seen it yet. Well, thankfully, I mean, from my understanding, the majority of tournaments are by Splinterlands, like the official Splinterlands tournaments. They make up a huge amount of the rewards. So if they just decided to put it in there, that would be a pretty big deal for us. A lot of the tournaments would not be accessible anymore. I don't know why they haven't done it. I guess it doesn't feel like a great solution where it's kind of this voluntary thing. I mean, I could just decide to stop respecting the tag at any point. I'm not going to, but I guess they want something more robust than just trust that I'm going to be respecting it.
So, Sylar, I'm curious to know kind of your view on the active player base, maybe from your perspective, from XBOT usage, and any other insight you might have from information you've kind of looked at, and just to see, in the past few months, we've seen a lot of people, talk about exiting the game. Have you seen, XBOT usage drop? Do you think maybe it's just people who are playing manually, who are kind of fed up with the fact that, a lot of people a lot more people are using bots now than before to do their personal accounts? Kind of what's your perspective on that?
I don't have any insider information, but I look at the dashboard on Peak Monsters to look at the active players. And I mean, it's undeniable that we're at a low point. We have, I think, less active players than ever before. I can kind of, to me, it's kind of a lot of players in similar situation to me, where they were using bots before, that have been driven out. Obviously, the bot proposal is part of that. The SPS requirements is part of that. I think there's been a push to sort of force people to play the game manually. I don't think there's that much appetite for that. I think a lot of people enjoy Splinterlands as an investment game. They like collecting cards. They like making decisions on which cards to buy, when to sell. And they don't, at the moment, really enjoy having to go every day and playing 30 minutes of battles and choosing their cards manually. So I think because that's been the push, a lot of people are feeling like, okay, I'm not going to be doing that, and I'm just going to quit. I think that's part of it. I hope eventually the game will become more fun. I think that would address that issue. I would also play manually if it was more fun. I think there's been a bit of a disconnect between pushing people towards the gameplay, while the gameplay isn't that great at the moment, in my opinion. I think it's been the same for like the last 2 years. There hasn't really been any major changes in the gameplay aspect. And here we are saying, okay, everyone needs to go and do this thing that we haven't polished in 2 years.
How about XBOT usage, though? Have you seen your usage numbers drop? I know it seems like you've got new tokens up for sale on tribal decks, and is this kind of the first time where they haven't sold out quickly? It looks like the resale price of the XBOT token on Hive Engine is actually a little bit below what it is if they get it direct from you. So is this something where you're seeing that your usage numbers are down, or have they kind of stayed steady and maybe, but there's no new users coming into the XBOT kind of ecosystem?
That's fair. Yeah, I think so. I think there's definitely been a decrease. I don't think we're getting any new users at the moment, partly because Splinterlands is not exactly growing, and we are sub community of Splinterlands. So if the game is not growing, we're not going to be growing. But for sure, there's been more of a downturn on the botting side. There's more people selling than buying, which is good for people who have invested, by the way. Like anyone who is invested into XBOT, they can get 90% of their investment back. It's not like your fee is gone, or the upfront cost is gone. But on the other side, as a project, I think we're doing pretty well. We've got the SPS market, which is picking up. We've got Battle Helper, of course, which is still working. And it's planned as it stands, it will still be working in modern after the change. And of course, we've got the analysis board, which at the moment is still free to use, but it's an additional feature that I think is quite desirable.
Mm-hmm. The SPS market is that you don't need an XBOT token to kind of use that market. Is that correct? Or do you need a token for that?
No, you don't. I tried to make it clear. I don't know if it's that clear, but it's a completely different service. You can just use it without any of the botting stuff.
Yeah, I had no. I think I had accidentally stumbled upon the analysis page once upon a time, many moons ago, and kind of forgot about it. And then I saw you on. I want to say it was the Splinterlands 101 crew. Geo is your biggest hype man in Australia. That guy is always singing praises for XBOT and what it's done for his collection and his investments. I think it's safe to assume that that's kind of where you're putting your eggs into the basket of Battle Helper moving forward with modern. Are we to be expecting any sort of iterations of Battle Helper? I know you've tossed in some code where you can pull back an experimental lineup, you can pull up a counter lineup. Is there, where has your mind taken you in terms of how do we expand Battle Helper? How do we make it a better tool? How do we offer more to users, if you have it all?
I did have some ideas. Honestly, I haven't really been thinking about upgrading it recently. Like last few weeks, I'm mostly in maintenance mode for the whole XBOT project. I'm not really trying to come up with new ideas and brainstorm. I think there is potential for sure. You can make it more interesting, giving people maybe more curated suggestions. Maybe you could have a suggestion that specifically counters your opponent's recent cards. I guess that's the counter mode. Yeah, there is some different opportunities, but it's kind of in a good place, and I think it's up to the game to advance, and it's also up to competitors to come up with solutions. I mean, as long as Battle Helper works really well, wins lots of battles, and people are paying for it, and they're happy using it, I think there isn't really too much of a point in keep iterating it further.
Sure. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That cliche holds true for very good reason. I'm curious with, so like we recently had Zerial come into the fold, and I went out and purchased her, and I've used Battle Helper a handful of times. I'm curious. I don't think I've seen her suggested all that often, so I'm curious if that's a reflection of XBOT Battle Helper kind of deeming her as being not very valuable in the lineup, or is there just not enough data to justify her being played? And if it's the latter, that could be a cool tweak. Like I want to volunteer experimental lineups with Zerial, for example, whenever possible, to kind of bring her into the mix for Battle Helper on future suggested hands.
Right. Yeah, that's a good one. But that could be possible to sort of nudge the algorithm in a certain direction and get certain cards out. It's basically the data, as you mentioned. So we like while we do have some kind of more advanced machine learning aspects to the algorithm, it's still fairly basic. If you have a database of the teams that have other people have played, and you're trying to replay the best teams, so it does depend on the database at the end of the day. And at the beginning of when a card gets released, you don't have that much data on it, so it is a data issue. It's interesting. Yeah, we could probably do something to promote usage of new cards more in the early stages.
Yeah, back to what you said earlier. I was actually just having a discussion with a buddy and a fellow guildie unit master, and we were talking about gameplay kind of feeling a little bit stale, and we both kind of jumped to the conclusion that weapons training has been the biggest single change in game mechanics, if you can call it that, since as long as I've been here. I think martyr to some extent, but it kind of reflects a little bit of a different aspect of what we've already seen with Bloodlust, whereas weapons training is something entirely new, and it's certainly shaking up the meta. So I fully expect a lot of those non-attacking soulbound cards, a lot of those non-attacking kind of legacy cards, your Almos, your Bagheeras, your Cube, to start entering into Battle Helper stuff once those soulbound cards get closer to max for respective leagues, and enter into manually played games a little bit more often. But yeah.
Yeah, there's been a couple of good rules. The ones I've liked was the brawl rule. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but the one that allows you to play gladiator cards in your lineup. That's been one of the more interesting ones.
You have a favorite gladiator? Quora?
Obviously Quora, because I like winning.
I've got to say, Django's, I've been, I felt that way too, Sylar. And then, I started recently, started to kind of try to go with what's the Gobson Sneak one? I know it's Jangle's, one of Jangle's favorite cards, one of the Gobson.
Petrelba.
Yeah, and I'm like, man, this actually works a lot better than Quora. I've found, because with especially if you're limited to splinters that you don't see, like if there's only like an earth and maybe splinters that don't have like a lot of sneak cards, like if life's not available or water, and just being able to sneak that in there, people don't necessarily expect it, and does a lot more damage. It can really get rolling.
Yeah, she's I think Kutrova's a she. She is devastating, and Immortalis. I think we've talked about Immortalis, the power of Immortalis, on the show a handful of times, and I think he's the clear favorite for Chaos Legion #1 legendary summoner. That shatter with the double strike of Kutrova is just, it's devastating, and it just plows through the back line.
Sylar, what level, you said you started to play, you joined a guild. What if you could tell us what guild you're in, and kind of what level of brawls are you playing in, since we're on the topic of gladiator cards right now?
Yeah, sure. So I'm in the infamous XBOT squad guild. We don't actually bot the guild. We use Battle Helper, I think, most of us. So yeah, it's my guild. I started a while ago. We have the 2-star brawl tier.
How about you personally? Which fray are you in?
So I usually play in the gold one.
Okay. The gold foil or gold level regular foil?
The gold level regular foil.
Okay. So do you find you're kind of like deficient on gladiator cards since you just started this kind of recently? Is that something that you've been, excited by, to kind of play around with some of those cards and try out some of those bloodlust abilities?
Yeah, they're super powerful. I mean, most gladiator cards are just straight up better than the equivalent normal cards. So for sure, I'm definitely way behind. You need many months to collect these cards on a good level.
Yeah, I'm beginning to wonder when we're going to see a new batch of gladiator cards come into the fold, and if the collecting of said gladiator cards is going to be offered in the same fashion. Because, Hep, I think we joined the game about the same time. I think we joined Phoenix about the same time, maybe a month or two apart from one another. And I've been collecting merits, for the better part of the last 18 months. And man, I think I've just hit level 6 common. So that's 60 BCX, only 340 to go. Should be there by 2030. So I'm wondering if we're going to see a little bit of a shakeup. Maybe some of the new guild buildings will offer a shifted approach in terms of how we are able to collect gladiator cards, or if your merits can go further and get you. Nah, who knows? It'll be interesting to see if they stick with the existing formula.
Yeah, because it's tough to release new cards, right? Because you release new cards, then you just dilute their ability to even level up all of your cards. So it's really tough for them right now, I'd say.
Sylar, tell us, you mentioned the game being a little bit stale. You're looking forward to some new game mechanics, some greater excitement in the gameplay. If Splinterlands was under Team Sylar, what would be kind of the first mechanic that you would want to get introduced into gameplay?
I think I really like the ideas that we have at the moment. So the next expansion, from my understanding, is going to be related to land and having craftable spells and items that you can use on your lineup. I think that's amazing. I think that's going to be the next big thing for the game. There are some other ideas that have been thrown around that I liked. There was one where you have a kind of spare card that you use in your team, that like an 8th or 7th monster that can step in once one dies out. And there was also an idea thrown around about having more modifiers. So having like a daily modifier that affects everyone equally, and those would be kind of randomized on a daily basis. I think this was advertised as an anti-bot thing. Could have worked. I mean, I would just like to see more things happening on the gameplay side. I know new rules are good, but you don't see them too often as well. Like a new rule might only affect your gameplay maybe 10% of the time, 5% of the time. So I would like to have more kind of game-changing, game-breaking changes that actually affect the whole experience.
Yeah, I think the last item that you called out, where I think it was Bulldog that put together the idea, and I would love to see that move to proposal, and I'm sure the community would get behind it. It sounds like just such a fun way to shift things up on a daily basis, where so for this 24-hour period, all Venari earn the Bloodlust ability, or all Goblin race monsters earn the double strike, or whatever it is, just to shake it up and possibly get some value to some of those cards that aren't necessarily played a whole ton, and really shake up the meta for on an ongoing basis, on a 24-hour kind of period at a time.
And that's the game format from Magic that I really like. So I don't really play the game myself, but I watch it a bit. I think the way it works is it's an arena mode like in Hearthstone, where you pick out cards from a random selection. But in Magic, you buy packs, and you use those cards to play against someone else who also buys packs and plays that like mini tournament. A game format like that would be really fun.
I think that's in the works, right? I think that's what Weirdbeard was. I think that was one of the only things that Weirdbeard highlighted on one of the recent roadmap reveals for late Q4 was the arena style draft mode, I think is what it was referred to as. Yeah.
Okay, maybe I missed that. That would be huge. I think that would be really fun.
So, Sylar, what's your perspective on those examples of different game modes we can have, and how hard they would be to automate? So let's talk about where everybody gets all the Venari get this ability, or have +1 to their attack or whatever it would be. How disruptive would that be to something like XBOT, or would that be something where you could kind of the bot could determine what that rule set is that day and adjust accordingly, or is it that flexibility just not there yet?
Yeah, it is. So I would be able to catch up to it. It would make it more difficult. It would make bots less efficient for sure, because we're relying a lot on historical data. And if every day's data is kind of skewed in a way by some random modifier, then we can't really trust our data as much. But in terms of the gameplay itself, I could update my my bot to account for these modifiers. I mean, you can read them. Nothing can be hidden from a bot, like with a captcha or anything. I would be able to read the data modifier, but it would definitely have an impact. It would have more of an impact than the third rule. That's pretty sure. That's pretty certain.
I'll follow up on that real quick. Do you feel like the third rule has helped bots and hurt people who play manually? Because I sure as heck do.
Yeah, I think so. It was a good idea. Maybe it's time to actually roll that back. I don't really know where the team stands on that, but for sure, I could see that bots have benefited from that extra complexity. And sometimes you get these really odd battles where, I mean, I have a decent collection, like a couple $1,000 of cards, and I end up in battles where I have like 5 cards to choose from, and I don't feel like that's kind of broken.
Yeah. So, you say that relies on historical data and changing up the rule sets or different things on a daily basis, but kind of eventually you would maybe get, if you that would kind of require them to not ever repeat something, right? So, but if they ever repeated something, you would say, all right, well, we already have this data, and now we can be a little bit better each time something's repeated, right?
I guess so. It would really fragment the data, though. If you're only using identical data, then you would have only that one day of data from 2 months ago where it happened. So you have to kind of be more smart about it, and like you probably still need all of the data, but maybe not rely on it as much.
I feel like the possibilities there are endless, right? Like it could be anything from, all odd cards get immunity to all of one species earns flying, or, I just feel like if you're cycling through abilities on races or card types or attack types, or maybe I'm giving too much credit to the pool of possibility there, but I feel like, you could go on forever.
You could, I mean, at some point it becomes too exhausting to remember everything. Like we've already got 3 rules. Maybe if we go back to 2 rules and then having the third one added on as a daily modifier, that could be interesting.
Yeah, right. Because we have so many cards to choose from. It's in a very limited amount of time to make those teams. So it'd be hard to 3 rule sets, this extra ability. So now it's kind of like a 4th rule set. Make it tough to. All right, and I've got, I don't know how many cards, or how many. I mean, I don't even know how many cards I have in my deck. To be honest with you, that's part of the problem too. It's so you kind of, as a player, you rely on, all right, I know, like in with these splinters available and this kind of mana cap, I'm tending towards 1 or 2 splinters, and then I'm building my hand out. But yeah, having thousands and thousands of cards, and trying to be able to keep that all straight and put a team together in 2 minutes, even as it is now, I'm if I'm not totally focused and locked in, if I'm distracted, something comes up in the middle of trying to set my teams, or I don't, I'm playing the game and doing something else and don't notice that the match started and now I've only got a minute, I'm rushed and I'm like, all right, this is not, the best team I could have put together. And yeah, I see how that can make it a lot more difficult with adding something else in. And you're like, all right, well, where do I even begin? Yeah, so it's definitely something to look at.
And related to that, I think what they could play around with is the time that you get to choose your team. I mean, if there's ever a bot only mode, don't know if there's demand for that, but I would really like it.
I think it's called Wild, Sylar.
I guess so.
Hey. I love playing Wild still. So we'll see. We'll see if I say that once the switch happens. But
yeah,
sorry, go ahead, Tyler.
Playing around with the time that you have to choose your team, because from my perspective as the bot developer, it would be really interesting having that as a restriction. Maybe if you have 30 seconds to choose your team, you've got to be making very different decisions as the developer.
And that probably in and of itself restricts usage of something like a battle helper, huh?
It does. I wonder how it feels for a player. Like, is it more fun if you have 30 seconds to choose a team, or do you feel so stressed and the anxiety goes up too much and you're just having a bad time?
I guess it depends if you win or lose.
Yeah. No, yeah. I think it would be way too hard. I mean, if it's something where it's like one rule set, or if it's all right, you're doing standard only, or like standard rule set only for something like that, then maybe it could be kind of fun and exhilarating. But definitely not with 3 rule sets, because I mean, to check, especially do you able to check, what is my opponent's last 5 battle history, what type of cards might I be up against, how could I what is he likely to play, and how am I going to counter that? Or it's that takes you more than 30 seconds to think about. So I think it would be that I would like to see like a button where it's like, all right, if you click this, it's like, maybe have it. I don't know if there's a way to do it so like a bot couldn't do it, but if it's almost like not like doing a full captcha thing, but click a button and give me an extra minute because I'm trying to figure this out, where the bot, has already got the hand, kind of dealt out in 5 seconds. Like give me an extra 30 seconds here.
I thought you were going to say with that 30-second timer, maybe they offer a button that just shuffles random cards into your lineup, and you can shuffle again, shuffle again, till it lands on something you're somewhat satisfied with. Sylar, I want to shift back to battle helper stuff. I'm curious, are you able to share with us kind of XBOT, the bot, the traditional bot, those that are running battles through the XBOT token versus the battle helper? How does the win rate compare?
I think it's almost identical, but battle helper is mostly used in brawls and tournaments, so that's not a good comparison, because in those formats you can't play with the bot.
Right. Okay. And is that is the data that you're seeing? Almost all of your battle helper usage is coming from non-ranked play? Yeah,
for sure. More than 95% is not ranked.
What is the distribution between modern and wild's XBOT token usage? Do you have enough of a user base in wild to support that shift, or are you expecting a little bit of a fall off in the token win rate once everybody's got to shift to wild?
Yeah, I'm expecting less rewards, probably also less bot usage overall. In terms of how many people play, it's been a bit of a shift. It used to be mostly modern. I think a lot of bot users prefer modern. It's been changing though. People are preparing for the change, preparing for the bot proposal, and they are shifting to wild.
Have you seen people, or I don't know if this is data you have, or seen what the XBOT has been playing? Are people, starting to pick up more wild cards, or is it people just trying to kind of play in wild with modern decks?
From what I can tell, they're just using the same collection. They're just trying it out in wild. A lot of the wild cards are not cost efficient from my perspective. I mean, if you're really looking out to win battles and get bang for your buck, then you're probably looking at modern cards.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was looking at, so I've very recently, and we talked about it a couple of episodes ago, I've recently pulled back a bunch of cards from the rental market and started playing my alt account. I got involved into another one of the Brawlers guilds and have been playing brawls. And within the last 2 weeks, I've gone to the marketplace and have been looking at wild cards for the very first time. I've always almost entirely stuck with purely modern cards. But a lot of the wild cards, they get those abilities. And just for further context, my alt plays It's all silver level cards for the most part. But I have started to supplement with some of the wild cards, and those wild cards, they get really clutch abilities at really low levels. So I wonder if have you considered with the analysis, and you mentioned earlier in the episode that you were looking at kind of maybe gating that feature a little bit through. I'm assuming now, obviously you have to be a token holder, but are you considering gating that to full XBOT token holders, and then mini and light token holders need to pay something additional, or how are you considering kind of rolling that as an add-on feature, and what are you looking to do to expand the analysis board?
So there's a different project now that's very similar that came out, Splinter Coach, if anyone wants to check it out. They have a similar service. So I've taken some of their things as inspiration. Like we've got breakdown by mana, cards, and rules. But you could have additional filters. You could have like a report that shows you your win rate by the splinter, and you could have one that shows you combinations of cards. So you could have, you could see your win rate with this specific card if it's played with this specific summoner. So you can kind of dig deeper into things. We recently added the date range selector, so you could select specific weeks. You could look at your win rate over the last season, for example, and not the entire period. So there's been a bit of work as well on the side. In terms of the pricing of it, I think it should be a separate feature. Might not be a popular opinion, but from the beginning of the project, the token was for the automation service, and that was really it. So I think the main use case of the token is to have automation, and it's not really there for other things. So right now it's for free for XBOT token users. That's kind of just as a gift to people, but really it's going to be a standalone feature that people have to pay for. I mean, that's maybe the way I've monetized this project. I feel like that's one of the things I've learned the most from making XBOT is how do you present things, how do you monetize things. Just like from a business perspective, if you're developing things, they need to be worth it. Otherwise, you're just doing things like for the good of your heart or to please people. But I've got to be getting something out of things if I want to continue doing them.
The good of your heart doesn't put bread on the table, Sylar. We know.
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Yeah. So to follow up on that, I know you had, initially you had the XBOT and the XBOT Lite token out, and you said, I want it to just be a one-time fee because, I think it's easier and you don't have to rely on, bots always being around and future revenue to kind of offset the work you've already done. And so you've since kind of released the XBOT mini token, and which does have a fee sharing based component, right? So what was kind of the decision behind doing that, and has that been successful? Did you see a lot of people picking that up, or maybe moving from an XBOT or XBOT Lite to the mini? How kind of what was behind that project, and how's it been going?
I think it was a success. It wasn't a massive success. I think enough people did find it useful that it was worth doing. It's a cheaper alternative, really. It's a cheaper way to get into the ecosystem or use XBOT's automation service without too much upfront cost. And for that, it was good. I still think, like most people who are going to be paying that 30%, they're going to be going for the full XBOT token because that 30% is actually quite a lot when you look at your bottom line. So I think we're probably not getting the fee from the people who are going to be paying the most in their reward sharing, but that's fine. I really just wanted to give people more options and sort of compete with the price point that Archmage has, and maybe even Splintermate. I don't know if anyone still uses them.
Do you see kind of a logical distribution? Like in my mind, if you're competing at the highest levels of the game and you're looking to bot your account, the XBOT token makes the most sense, right? Whereas if maybe you're just dabbling in bronze or silver and looking to bot as an alt account, XBOT Mini makes much more sense. The real prize is is probably the soulbound reward cards and the merits and that sort of stuff. Has the distribution of sales and what you're seeing in ranked play with the respective tokens reflective of that?
I would have to look at exactly which leagues people are using the tokens in. I don't have that data. But in terms of the sales, it's still fairly consistently the XBOT and XBOT Lite token. Mini is not getting that much attention. I think it kind of goes to show that people do prefer paying upfront and like knowing what they're getting instead of committing themselves to 30% fee on their rewards for the rest of time.
Did you ever expect XBOT to take off like it has? I mean, I think it was Splinterlands 101 that introduced me to XBOT, and I think Bulldog. I don't know who initiated that conversation between the two of you guys, but I think Bulldog, did a great service in kind of presenting XBOT to the Splinterlands world when you kind of first came into the scene, and I managed to. I'm going to pat myself on the back here. I managed to get an XBOT token for $20, and I think within the next week it had gone up to $75 or $80, and it's kind of sat there since. Did you ever go into this expecting this would kind of become your full-time job and offer such a lucrative business for you?
No, I had my expectations set way too low. You could probably tell by the token prices initially. But it's pretty crazy. I mean, looking at the market cap on tribal decks, we were looking at $200,000 of value created. So that's pretty incredible. Just how much value I was able to generate with this project.
Are you still a one-man team? So when you say we, do you mean the proverbial we? Is it Sylar and Team XBOT?
Yeah, it's the XBOT team, which is
nice.
A one-man team.
Excellent.
That's awesome. So Sylar, I was wondering if you had looked at any other Web3 games. Do you play any other Web3 games, or have you thought about trying to get into any of those and develop any automation tools for anything else besides Splinterlands?
Yeah. So I was into a bunch of games. Some of them I've stopped playing. DeFi Kingdoms is one of the ones I was really into. You might have heard of it. It's based on a different blockchain. They've been around for a while. So I was in that ecosystem for quite a while. I made an automation bot as well. I made a market bot for that. It's been a bit slow in development. That's why I left recently. There was also Overlord Golem that I played for quite a bit. Pretty fun, until you kind of figure out that there's only really like one or two things to do, then it gets a bit boring. But yeah, it was cool. The one that I'm really excited about is a bigger NFT project. It's called Cypher. Cypher Atlas, Cypherian Surge, something like that. So it's like a MOBA type game. It's been developed for a while, and I got some of the NFTs and waiting for the game to come out.
What is the name of the game? Cypher?
Cypherian Surge. That's the collection name.
Cypherian Surge.
With an S, yeah.
Oh, with an
S. Got you. Oh, it's OpenSea.
Yeah. They've got a development team behind them, and they're making a game out of it.
Interesting. What was DeFi Kingdoms like? I'm interested. I had seen that game and thought about playing it, but then, kind of looking at the gameplay mechanics, it really looked like it was just, kind of basic DeFi pools and staking and things like that, and didn't seem like there was much gameplay there. Was that the case, or were there elements of that were actually kind of gamified and fun?
No, so it was, you had your NFTs and the gameplay was questing. So you could go to click on an NPC and start a quest, and you can claim it after 8 hours. You get some reward. I think they wanted to make PvP at some point. It might be there now, but that was a while ago. It was really fun. I mean, the art was amazing. You had these really cool characters. They were unique. You could level them up. I automated most of it as well. But it had lots of potential. I think the main reason why that project didn't succeed till now at least, is because of a hack on the Harmony blockchain. That was a while ago, but a lot of the assets on that chain basically went to zero. It was the bridge was exploited, and a lot of the assets on that game were affected as well. I mean, at the peak of DeFi Kingdoms, the cheapest hero was $250, and now I think it's $1 or $2. So there's been quite a development in that game.
Wow. Yeah, that's quite the sink. Not sure if we'll see that in Splinterlands, but if I can, snag some Yonins at a couple bucks, even if the game's in shambles, I still might be happy.
You're gonna have to race me to get those. Yep. I'm curious. So being big into crypto, Sylar, what was it specifically about Splinterlands that attracted you? Was it the Hive blockchain? Was it the trading card game aspect? Was it the prospect of land? I'm sure when you came in, that was kind of starting to develop some steam. What specifically was it about Splinterlands that caught your eye and brought you into the ecosystem?
Specifically, play to earn. That concept intrigued me. Another aspect, I think Splinterlands can also work without play to earn. I think the people love collectibles. Magic is huge. Even now, I don't know how old it is, more than 10 years. People love Magic and they love collecting the cards. And all the cards that are out of print from 10 years ago, Black Lotus and some other cards, are worth 10 grand on the aftermarket. So I just see a huge potential in digital version of Magic or collectible card games in general. So that's where I see the value come from. And play to earn is a cool marketing technique more than anything. I don't think it's a fundamental part of the game. I think it's a cool feature. But the main feature of Splinterlands for me is ownership, having cool things like cards that actually you want to have, not just to earn money, but you just want to be part of the ecosystem.
Yeah, I think you answered this earlier, but it was definitely on the tip of my tongue. I was going to ask if you were historically a Magic the Gathering guy. I think, maybe the specifics, but I think Magic the Gathering's been going since early 90s. I want to say Alpha came out 92, 93. Something like that, because I played when I was in late middle school, early high school, so like late 90s. And I had already missed, like, Black Lotus printing had come and gone by that point. And it was already firmly embedded in kind of the depths of Magic the Gathering lore. Was the fabled Black Lotus. But yeah, credit to those guys, 30 years strong, and I think. I've seen them in some pretty big headlines recently with the I don't know if it's a Lord of the Rings partnership, but they're doing a serialized print of the One Ring card, and there's already offers of 7 figures for people to land that thing and hand it over. It's just crazy. The collectability aspect. I think you're spot on there. Is a massive draw.
For sure, yeah. I did hear about the Lord of the Rings card. Pretty crazy what they're doing. And I mean, that game has so many flaws. Like, I'm not too deep into Magic. I was more of a Yu-Gi-Oh person growing up. But I love the universe. And because in Magic, I think the main problem right now is you've got the physical card game where people collect the actual cards, and you've got 2 online versions of the same game where, the economy is completely separate. So you've got basically every card in 3 different versions, which is kind of a waste and a shame. I feel like that's one of the biggest advantages of Splinterlands, is that everything is unified.
Yeah, I feel like it would be such an easy solution to introduce like the Nintendo Amiibo technology into Magic. You know what I mean? So like if you have the Black Lotus physical card, I can just scan a little QR code on the back or something, and bam, I have it in the digital world as well, sort of thing.
Yeah, that would be great.
So what about the Hive blockchain? Are you long-term bullish on what Hive offers in the world of of cryptocurrency?
I mean, from a centralization standpoint, it's not very good. We have a fairly limited amount of validators or witnesses, as they're called. I would have to imagine that a bunch of them are running on the same infrastructure, probably AWS servers. So in terms of security, I think it's a bit shaky. I would like also a bit more transparency on development. I don't know exactly where to go to be up to date with Hive development. That could probably be improved a bit. But in terms of what I've seen, the products, the services, the usability from a developer's point of view, it's very good. It's fairly easy for a developer to come in and work with the Hive blockchain and to build on it. Yeah, so there's some downsides, but I think it's mostly good. My biggest gripe with the blockchain is HBD. I really don't like HBD. I feel like it should be probably removed at this point. It's an old idea. HBD existed before the Luna the Terra Luna fiasco. And I don't know. I think that was proof that this concept doesn't work, but they've tried to upgrade it and introduce new rules to avoid what happened to Terra Luna. I'm not sure I'm really convinced that what they put in is going to protect us. And worst case scenario, if that kind of mechanism doesn't work out, it would have impact on Hive because HBD is backed through the Hive token. So it does actually, is very relevant to anyone who's in Splinterlands.
Yeah, it's interesting. We had Aggie on a few weeks back, maybe a month back, and he was saying he loved HBD and thought it was the best stable coin out there. I don't know if he has some sort of what skin in the game he might have or any biases he has, but yeah, we were talking about it afterwards. I didn't realize it. So it is kind of like that burn. Do you have to burn Hive to get HBD and vice versa? Is that kind of the mechanic that supports it?
Yeah, so if you're familiar with Terra Luna, how that worked, it's fundamentally the same mechanism, but they have some extra features. I don't want to say it's the same. It's not fair. Right. They definitely did think about the problem, and they have some extra mechanisms to protect the death spiral. Yeah. I think I would just like to have a bit more certainty. Like, let's maybe run some simulations. Let's have some academics look into this. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. That's a good kind of natural segue to the latest proposal from Holozor. Have you had a chance to get eyes on that, Sylar, and are you keen to share some thoughts?
I haven't.
What is it? So it was in direct response to Bulldog's, the trading of nearly 500K in stable coins for DEC, which obviously failed. And Holozor put forth the idea of buying 250K, trading out $250,000 of the stable coins for HBD, and using that 20% interest to slowly invest into DEC. I think the idea is on a monthly basis or daily basis, use the interest, or whenever the interest is delivered to the account, use the interest to stake or to hold 50% of the DEC and to burn the other 50% of the DEC that's earned through HBD interest.
Yeah, I think I did read that. It makes total sense if you believe in HBD, like, for sure. You're putting more money into the ecosystem. HBD indirectly boosts the price of Hive. So it makes total sense if you think HBD is a good idea. But if you don't, it's a giant mistake.
Oh, there's my answer.
Yeah.
Cool. Hep, anything else kind of itching at your brain to put on the table for Sylar?
No, I think this has been great. Definitely answered all the questions and all the little threads I wanted to pick at. So definitely appreciate your time, and thanks for coming on, Sylar. If you have maybe you've done a Sylar, do you have anything else you want to say? Do you want anything else you want to plug? I know we kind of talked about some new stuff you got going on, and love to hear more about that when you get that developed too. So, is there anything else you'd like to let everybody know about?
No, I can't think of anything. Thank you for the opportunity to come on. Always fun to chat to Splinterlands people.
Cool. Well, best of luck to Team XBOT, Sylar, the one man wrecking crew. I'm sure we'll be hearing from you in one way or another before too long. And I've seen the calls in the XBOT Discord for Splinterlands, the team to hire you. And I want to end on this note. Number one, have those calls come a knocking, and number two, would you entertain said calls?
They haven't come to me. Maybe I should probably approach. I think if they think about having some sort of inbuilt automation, and maybe in the lower leagues you could automate your account, for sure that would be an opportunity. Or maybe I think there was talks of Battle Helper, having Battle Helper as an in-game option. So for sure, if there's something like that I could do, I would be interested. Yeah, I'm open to the idea.
Cool. Well, appreciate what you do, man. Appreciate the transparency. Yeah, go check out the analysis board before it becomes gated. Take advantage of the free service while you can, and enjoy the practice bots. And yeah, looking forward to a new era of Splinterlands. It's going to be interesting to see how things unfold and how the community reacts once modern is bot free.
Yeah, agreed.
Cool. All right, Sylar. Well, on behalf of the whole community, man, thank you for taking the time. It's a fun conversation. Glad we could finally make it happen. Hope you had a good vacation, and back to the grindstone. Huh?
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, Sylar. For everybody listening out there, you have been listening to
The People's Guild.